This video is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon. Hi guys, I'm here with the video showing you how I made the daggers for my Nia cosplay, and I'm going to get right to it. The first thing I did was cut out the shape of the dagger that I needed in foam. However, the foam I had was a little bit too thin and also textured on one side, so I stuck two pieces together for each dagger so that each side of the blade was nice and smooth, and I think these two pieces together made it about 12 millimeters thick. Next, I took some wooden dowels and cut them to the size I need for the handle piece, with a little bit extra on the end so that I could stick it in between the two layers of foam that I used to make the blades. But before doing any of that, I was going to make the little bottom detail on the handle, which is this like diamond shape to it. So to do that, I took the aluminum foil that you see at the end there and roughly shaped it into a diamond shape and hot glued that onto the end of the wooden dowels. Then I took Cosplay clay or EVA clay foam and coated that and better shaped it from that. And I did it this way just so that I used less foam and, you know, it didn't like waste a bunch of foam, and it also dries quicker this way because it's not like a really thick glob of foam on the end there. So yeah, that's how I made it, and I used water to help kind of smooth it out, and I just shaped it into a diamond that you see there. Sorry that a lot of this was off camera, I didn't realize. Hopping back over to the blade, the next thing I did was take my Dremel and sand down the edges on both sides of all the blades and create a beveled edge. Now I glued the handle into the blade. I just opened up the end of the blade there, stuck some glue in there, stuck some glue on the end of the wooden dowel, and then stuck them together. I made sure not to glue the blade completely shut at the end, but if you do, you can open it up by heating it with a heat gun and pulling that apart again. Once the foam at the end of the handles are dry, I use my Dremel and sand that into a sharper diamond shape. Next, I prime the entire thing with a couple layers of wood glue. In between layers of wood glue, I fill in some of the seams because these blades had a little bit of rough seams, especially around where I had beveled the area due to the inside of it being textured. Anyways, I fill in the seams using Bondo's glazing and spot putty. I do a layer of that, let it dry, and then sand it all away until it's nice and smooth, and I repeat that if necessary. However, I won't lie, I got a little bit lazy with these ones and I only did it once, even though it probably could have used like 1 or 2 more coats of the gap filler. But once that was all done, I do another like 2 to 3 layers of wood glue. After everything is primed, it's time to start painting. To paint this, I used acrylic paints and I painted the blade silver and the handle black. And I had to do a few layers for each color, especially the silver, because it did not go on opaque whatsoever. It was very transparent, or like see-through-ish sheer. Like, it's very thin paint, so I had to do quite a few layers of silver. Then I paint the end of the handle gold. Next, I made the sheaths for the daggers, and it's exactly the same shape as blade. I just cut out that same shape with a little bit of excess around it for seam allowance in brown fake leather fabric, sewed that together so that it was shut, and then cut out long thin strips of the same fabric to create the belts that wrap around each sheath, which is what you see me working on here. What I'm doing here is getting ready to do the decorative red stitching that her sheath and the belts around the sheath have. To do this, I used a silver Sharpie and marked on the wrong side of the fabric tiny little dots on where I needed the stitches to go, because I wanted them to all be nice and even in length and distance apart. I think I used about 1/4 of an inch stitch length for the belt and about 1/2 inch stitch length for the sheath. And for these stitches, I use embroidery floss and just hand stitch them all into place. For some of the other details on the sheath, I took 2mm EVA foam and cut it out into a diamond shape that fit at the bottom of the sheath. I primed that with wood glue. I think I only did about 2 or 3 layers for this, and then I painted it with gold and glued it into place using contact cement. Before going any further, I went ahead and sewed small little loops onto the back of the sheath so that I could slip them through a belt, because I forgot to do that before sewing the sheath together. Next, I'm gluing these belt buckles that I made out of 4mm EVA foam and painted silver onto one side of the belts that go around the sheath, and I'm using contact cement to glue those into place. And then I wrap those belts around the sheath and glue the belts onto the sheath and into place. I cut long red strips of red fabric and folded over the raw edges to make a nice hem on either side, and this material is going to be used to wrap the handles of each blade. I secure one end of the little strip of red fabric down using hot glue to the bottom, either end, it doesn't really matter, of the handle, and then begin to wrap it very tightly around the handle, occasionally adding a little bit of hot glue just to make sure everything's really nice and secured into place. And then I cut off any excess and kind of just tuck it away and make sure it all looks really nice and neat. And with that, the daggers are finished. I hope you guys found this video helpful, even though I know it wasn't filmed the best. This was a fairly old video and my setup was like way worse back then, so I'm sorry for the quality and for like constantly going off screen with what I was doing. Thanks for those of you who do stick around, and if you want to see some better filmed tutorials, those are on my channel. Hopefully this video is still helpful though. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a lovely day, and bye!